Not in Southern Oregon, it's not, and probably even worse in California for those of you who are here from there. Creates an ideal seed bed. Well, okay, we'll look further at that. What tilling actually does to the soil. Tilling physically breaks up the soil clumps temporarily, loosening the earth for planting and mixing in organic matter. However, it destroys natural soil structure, kills beneficial microorganisms like earthworms, fungi, protozoa. It doesn't annihilate all the protozoa, but it attacks them. It's like, rototilling is like putting all your soil in a blender. And I haven't lost any friends over it, but it's funny because our head elder came to me and said, I'm not giving up my rototiller. And 3 weeks later, he repented, so. It was pretty cool. And yeah, so so think about it. Where do earthworms live? Well, in the soil, but what part of the soil? Well, there's some night crawlers that go deep. But where do most of the earthworms live? So now for every 100 earthworms you now have 200 or 300, right? You have 200 or 300 in pieces, but
starfish, that might be all right.
exactly, but they're not like starfish. It kills them. It destroys them. And oh, yeah, and we're going to look at this. We're going to really nail this one down. What's the job of plants, especially weeds, to bring carbon into the soil? I see we have a hand.
How do you compost then? If you're gonna, if the animals dig up your, so I know the earthworms are in there and I see them, but how do you turn it over so that you don't just have it laying on the surface?
Two ways. So I wish we didn't have time to put compost part in this. When I've taught it before, we actually go out in the garden and compost, and then we go through all that. Compost, if you're just a small gardener, you do everything by hand. And there's ratios. So you can go online and you can be I tell people you're only a few mouse clicks away from being a genius on every topic. So they've really got that. I am a little bigger scale, so I use a backhoe, and I keep my compost pile at about 140 to 150 degrees, which is a little hot, but I make these what I call wide beds, which I'm going to show you, and I don't want any weeds in there. And what we're going to learn about weeds from yesterday, instead of weed eradication, we're going to look at weed suppression. God's way is to suppress those weeds, crowd them out so they have no way of possibly growing. That is God's way of doing it as far as the weeds go. But that's why I run my compost pile so hot, is I want soil with no weeds so that you start with a good soil with no weeds in it. How do I get it hot? So God designed it that way. So what you have to do is and again, here's where you can go get some YouTubes. I'm going to see if Brian, he's not here, and maybe Steve would know. Will I be able to leave some information on your site for this camp where they can come to and then click, and it might even lead to I don't want to put 100 YouTubes and things, but maybe we could have a link that would lead to a whole bunch of stuff for you. We should be able to do that, right, Steve? So for those of you who want to learn more about this, all these different topics and questions, you are a mouse click away from being a genius. And what I will do, it'll take a week or something, but I will I've already got a whole bunch, but that was 4 years ago. We've got a lot more good information since then. I'll pull a bunch of the best stuff together. We'll put a link, and you can go compost. What happens is you got to have a ratio. The ratio is somewhere between 25 and 30% nitrogen, and the rest is carbon. And carbon is anything brown or black, right? Carbon is black. So manures, peat moss, the type of soils you might buy downtown or something, you got to mix 1/4 to 1/3 green. So grass clippings, weeds, I delight burying blackberries. My wife hates it when I do that because oh, we're going to have blackberries all over the garden. No, we're not. Never happened. She's finally starting to believe me after several years that you can, if long as you get your soil to 140, 150, that you can, yeah. So it's the nitrogen that heats the pile. If your pile goes cold, add more nitrogen, let it sit a few days, stir it up. There's ways you can actually, the California Master Gardener shows you how to do compost in like, I think it was like 2 weeks, start to finish. Wow. But how do you do that? A backhoe is the best. You have to turn it about every second, third day to do that.
I tried in our property to make a compost
Yeah.
pile and everything. The critters come in and eat the compost.
Oh yeah, you have to. You have to have dogs, fences, or something to keep the critters out. So.
Another way to do that is run air underneath the pile.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, and that's another one that there's the commercial growers, they use air. Then you don't have to turn your pile so much because what happens is there's bacteria called thermophiles. They love heat. Okay, because you have bacteria that's just your normal bacteria that's here all winter long, all summer long, and they're a low temperature one. So then what happens is another set of bacteria that are more mid-range, so maybe 80 above to 100, maybe a little over 100. Then you got these thermophiles, and they come in there, and when they take off, oh my, things start to happen. And that soil will heat up. I think you could get over 150 if you had lots of nitrogen and water and enough moisture content, but you don't really want over 150. 150 is, I think, is pushing it about as hot as you want to go, but I like living life on the edge, so.
I sit down on that note because I have a bunch of earthworms in my compost and maybe my pile's too cold, but I was wondering how you
So there's aerobic and anaerobic ways of doing it. So one is where you introduce oxygen and the other is not. So if you have where you just make a pile and you do nothing with it, the earthworms will come and do all that work, but it takes about 2 years. When you turn it and put the oxygen in it, it speeds things up. The thermophiles come because the thermophiles aren't going to go in an anaerobic pile. They're the bacteria that are thermo, right? Thermo for hot. Yeah. So they'll show up once the pile gets up, I don't know, 120 or something like. A tarp, I don't, but again, you're a mouse click away from being a genius, and there's so many ways of doing it that most places, I haven't seen them using a tarp that much, but you could, I guess. How do you get it hot? The nitrogen, the green. The green, think of it as fuel. Yeah, the nitrogen is the fuel that makes it hot. 1/3, don't go over 1/3. A friend of mine, he had a pile where he did nothing but grass clippings. And I went over there, I was working, and you can imagine how much it smells. So I kind of helped him out a little bit there and showed him how we could get that. It was a slimy mess is what it was. And it smelled, it was really rank. And so I helped him out a little bit there and showed him that, like, okay, mix in a little of this dirt, mix in a little of this, and get that nitrogen, that carbon content up to about 2/3. All right. So as you can see, we've been, because of tradition, have you noticed that tradition doesn't always follow God's way? Did Jesus talk about tradition? And how well did tradition go? So we've all been influenced by it. I mean, yeah. So we have small tillers. We even have the little mantis tillers, you know, little wee ones. As you get, the older you get, the smaller tiller you want, right? I remember watching that with my folks. Mom, every few years, Mom got a smaller rototiller. And then we have big rototillers. And I didn't have time. I was going to put a couple other ones in there. We even have rototiller racing. And I'm going to see if I have my book. Yes, I do. And isn't that cool? Oh, and I got to give credit to Mike Finnegan, the writer, October 5th, 2012, Hot Rod Magazine. We're going to come back to this in a minute. And, but are you noticing anything about the soil in this picture?
Fine. The color.
The color?
It's
Yep.
light.
The color is light.
Yeah.
Anyone explain to me why the color is light?
Not enough carbon.
Not enough carbon. What's the job of plants, especially weeds? To put carbon in the soil. What else are you noticing about the picture? You do have to admit, if your garden looked like that, you know, and all that, and people came, they think you're doing a wonderful job, and it looks beautiful, it looks appealing, other than the fact that now you know some things that maybe not everyone knows. And so we're going to back up to this one again. No, what happened? Oh, I went the wrong way. So what can you tell me about this picture? This one is so obvious.
Fines. Lots of fines.
There's no carbon left, is there? So this is, I deliberately picked this one because it really shows my point, doesn't it? And what color is that dust coming out of there? There's no carbon left. None. So how many earthworms do you think there'd be in that soil? What about the system I showed you yesterday? Do you think it would attack that? There'd be nothing left of what I showed you yesterday. It'd be just, be like, well, again, Satan's very clever, isn't he? He looks and he said, well, God said tilling's all right. Right? What about, are you beginning to see the great controversy that we're in between Christ and Satan? And you see how Satan has affected how we grow. And you understand now, I think most of you that have been here can explain why that tomato has no taste, why that strawberry has no taste. It's not because we let it get ripe. Oh, wait a minute. I went backwards. All right. You've seen these pictures, right? I'll give this one credit by Arthur Rothstein. This image is available from the United States Library of Congress Prints and Photographs Division under the Digital ID FS8 8B 27276. So I guess I'll give them some credit, being I'm using their picture. What are you seeing in the air? Does it look anything like the rototill racing soil? It's the opposite spectrum of the rototill racing spectrum, isn't it? So what are you seeing there? Carbon. Carbon. No, you look at in the air. The air. Oh yeah, the air is black. Totally black. And what is black? Carbon. Not only is rototilling a violent mechanical process that physically pulverizes the soil, it destroys all the microbes and all the humus, all of it. It just destroys everything that we have learned about. So we no longer till the way God designed it. We have an enemy that's very clever. He decided that if tilling was good, then let's go tilling. And so he added the Brace and Stratton to it. Oh, yes. And, of course, the government studies will tell you that tilling has what? Impact on the soil? None. Would you rather have soil that looked like some of the ones we just looked at, or would you like to have some soil that looked like this? I didn't get, I have a live little blurb I was going to put in there, but I didn't get a chance last night because there was no, I wasn't able to get in. So I have pictures of That's what my soil looks like, that last one. So what can you do if you've been like me all of my life and rototilled the soil until I've destroyed basically everything that God has put in there? How can we start to reclaim our soil? Well, here's a small way. Take you a while, but if you're a small gardener, this is where you start. I make between 10 and 20 yards of soil every year because I destroyed it so bad that I had to go a little bigger than most of you. Here's something else you can do. I'll put this mic back over here. What do you think about, what are you seeing there? Leaves. And what are in the leaves? Carbon. They'll turn to carbon. They're on their way to turn into carbon when they fall. What else are in those leaves? Nitrogen, maybe a little bit. Minerals. Those are like a hypodermic needle of minerals. How cool is that? Isn't God clever? In the fall, what happens? All those leaves drop. God is feeding the soil and keeping the minerals in the soil.
But everybody breaks them up and burns them.
Comment over here.
How do you get them into your soil?
Oh, yeah. Okay, we'll talk about how we get them in the soil. So what you do is do not layer the leaves like 6, 8 inches. Don't do that because what do you think that'll do? It'll smother, right? How many inches of leaves does God put out in nature? A couple, 3 inches? Yeah. Follow God's plan. And then if you want to speed up God's plan, what you do is don't use your rototiller. Please don't do that. But you can use a lawnmower. Grab your lawnmower. Get out there. Mulch. See, what's going to happen is the worms are going to come up and eat them. If you come along, look what you've already done. You've made it so easy for the earthworms to finish off the rest of the job, haven't you?
It's the same way with your compost pile. You say it takes 2 years, but you put those weeds and stuff and then run over them when you meet the garden. Run over
Yeah.
the lawnmower and chop them up, then they'll break down faster.
That's true. But then you see, the 2-year mark is where you just throw a pile and do nothing, right? And so you can speed it up with that. I make my compost in usually 2 to 3 months. I do it a little slower than, but I did try it one time to see if that would work and do it. I did it in about 3 weeks. I had soil that was, I went from compost to soil in about 3 weeks. Turning it every second, third day for, yeah. Yes, you can. You have to start young. What? we got a couple, 3 more. We got to keep moving, or we won't even get to how to actually. I love your questions, but we do want to make sure we get to. I'm actually going to show you how to take advantage of everything we've learned and give you several ideas about how you can double your production, get 3 or 4 times more production. But even more importantly, even if you don't double your production, we're going to show you how to get some amazing quality that you cannot buy downtown because the quality's there. God designed the quality to be there.
Can you make a question and answer period at the end?
Sure, let's do that. Let's do that. So here's the thing. A lot of people don't realize, and they'll go out and buy mycorrhiza. Do you think there's people out there trying to sell you mycorrhiza? Oh, yeah, there is. There's lots of people. Do you think they're making any money doing that? Oh, yeah, they're doing that. And I'm not going to, I don't want to throw stones at them at all because, but I'll let you in on a little secret. Did God plan this or not? So if you start working with Him at the center of your garden experience, do you think all this mycorrhiza and all the protozoa, and do you think all the bacteria will they not just show up on their own? We shouldn't have to go and buy bacteria. God designed it, the bacteria will come. The protozoa is everywhere. So as long as we don't continue, there's 3 ways. So what are the 3 ways that take out protozoa and all the system that God designed? 3 things that we've discussed so far. Rototilling, chemical fertilizer, and chemical spray. Long as you're not doing one of those 3, the bacteria will come, the protozoa will come, the whole system will take off and kick in, and we start. Isn't God good? You can add a little leaf mold if you want. Gardens are not, even though the fungi under there is that, the mycorrhizal fungi is a fungi. However, if you look out in nature, remember what Ellen White told us when we did the planting by the blueprint to put leaf mold, right? She knew an awful lot for someone with a grade 3 education. It took me 70 years to find that out. Trees and your orchard are fungi-based. Guess what your garden is? Bacteria-based. So you can add a little leaf mold if you want in your garden, but don't overdo it. If you do, just a little wee bit. It's not a big, it's not going to hurt anything because it's organic and it's going to make wonderful soil and it'll build up your soil, but don't overdo it.
So the pine and the fir needles are a problem?
Oh yeah, stay away from black walnut. You said pine and fir. So now fir, I'm not sure because fir is in the arbuscular mycorrhiza spectrum, so I'm not sure about fir. I haven't studied that.
What about black oak?
Black oak? Leaves? You're a mouse click away from being a genius. My goal is actually to encourage you to go out and research, because I don't remember there being anything bad, but I'm not sure on that. Oh, wait a minute, I gotta back up here. So, when you till by hand, do you think the earthworms will thank you? Yes. Do you think the soil will thank you? Yes. You see, the rototiller makes the soil so it can't even hold moisture. Do you think the living organisms that they'll go up to 100 feet to bring back those minerals that the plant needs? Do you think they'll thank you? But we go, yeah, but I heard it over here. It's too much work, right? And it is work, but it doesn't have to be, because what we're going to do from here on, we're going to move towards how can we garden effectively using this knowledge that we have. And I'm not into weed spraying at all, as you can see. And I'm not saying you should never do it. I have a fence line that I have to do something with. But we're going to talk about weed suppression. We can plant our gardens in such a way. Right now, I'm a Canadian, so I can get away with this. We're going to just start talking about the white man not very smart method of gardening. And what is the white man not very smart method of gardening? It's the one we've been tricked into. We'll go out, we'll take 1,000 square feet, we'll scratch out some lines, and then what do? Plants our seeds, and then we walk on. Yeah, we till before we even, we till. Then we spray the weeds, and then what happens? Well, we walk on 950 square feet of it, and guess what those plants, all the weeds, guess what? Well, I didn't mention this. Does rototilling suppress the weeds? It digs up tens of thousands of weeds. The seeds are there. It brings them up to the surface. So now You've got 950 square feet. What do you think the weeds think about that? You just invited them to the party. And so then, yeah. So, but we look and we think it's too much work. And yeah, it is some work. Terry McComb, I talked to Terry about, okay, well, what does even tilling by humans do to the soil and this system? And this is one thing I have yet to find out. Even hand tilling, my opinion and Terry McComb's opinion is that I think the whole point of the curse and in sweat, if we start young, guess how much healthier we'll be when we get our age? Right? You'll be strong and you'll be healthy and you'll be able to live to your 80s and get out there with a little fork like this. And some of this is okay because you need to have about 26% of oxygen air in the soil. I don't remember. Do you remember that number? I forgot it off the top of my head. It's around 26% of the soil capacity needs to be air. And so if we start at a young age doing manual labor, from what I see, it has more benefit. I can tell you this, it has more benefit for us than it does for the soil, although the soil does need air. So what we do is we look at the whole garden and we see a million weeds starting to grow because we just rototilled them and now they're having a wonderful time because they're doing exactly what God told them to do. And what's that? Go repair the soil. Did we do any damage with our rototilling? Is there any repair work that needs to be done? Do you see why I call it the white man, not very smart method of gardening? There's a reason. And I deliberately chose a name like that because I want to plant it in your memory. I don't want you to forget this. And when you look at your typical garden, I want you to think about that is the white man, not very smart method of gardening, okay? Because I want you to see something God wants all of us. Does God not have a much better way? Okay. Oh, and the other thing is, so what would happen if we started covering our gardens in the fall with some of them leaves? More microbes, we're feeding the earthworms, we're building the soil, we're putting minerals in the soil. Isn't that remarkable for something as simple as that? Suppresses the weeds over the winter. Isn't God good? This is why I call this His garden seminar. This is not my garden seminar. This is God's garden seminar. From this point on, we're going to look at practical ways to work in harmony with our Creator. Isn't that wonderful? By using methods that I'm promising you 3 things. Improve our production and efficiency. Naturally suppress weeds. Oh, what do you think of that? Isn't that, it's worth coming to the seminar just for that, isn't it? Have a produce that is loaded with minerals, vitamins, and nutrients designed for our optimal health. And that is why God led me through the whole vitamin thing at the very start. We have to have those minerals and vitamins. If we don't, our health declines. And you're not going to get it at your favorite superstore, even if it's Costco. Right? I have to pick on somebody, I guess. So I don't know how you could get a better bargain than this. From AI. Traditional garden rows involve planting crops in long single lines with dedicated walking paths between them. This method is what? Ideal. For larger spaces, as it accommodates heavy machinery like tillers and sprawling plants, though it requires more space. Yeah, more space, okay. And soil tilling. And we typically go about 30 inches wide or whatever. Everyone's got a little different on that. And I used to love how that garden looked. It does look like you. No one could say that it doesn't look nice after you just finished rototilling, because it does look really nice. And as I've already just talked about, the weeds go. Oh, thank you, thank you. You just invited me to the party, and so at this point we're gonna. Oh, I got to read this. I do want to make it clear: I'm not the Holy Spirit, right? And I'm not your conscience. I'm just an ordinary guy that God has sent with a message to show how the system was designed and how it operates, and what you do with that information is up to you. And so what I've done is I've put together a series of things where you can double your production should you choose to do that, certainly improve the quality of your food without spending any money whatsoever, but you will need to have a little bit of elbow grease involved there, or hire somebody that has more elbow grease than you do. But the results will be so worthwhile. Oh, and by the way, this is my wife. And when I met her, she was rototilling, as was I. But just to show you that, I'm going to just show you that if you can't give up your rototiller, at least do what my wife did. And that is, she would put tons of goat manure all over the place and till it in. I would say that's a pretty impressive looking crop. And so I'm just saying, yeah. So it's, should you choose to keep your rototiller, you can grow some really nice looking and tasting and probably pretty healthy food. So anyway. And so, have you learned now why a strawberry has no taste? Yeah. Pretty obvious, isn't it? Yeah. Yeah. Here we are, the one you've been waiting for. Finally. I love that slide. I'm an artist. I just love that slide. I would do the garden seminar just for the slides I get to do. I really enjoy that.
Is that your garden?
I wished. No, my garden has a few more weeds. That's because everybody around, I'm a small contractor, and by April or May, I'm usually booked up for the whole year. So my poor garden.
Children need shoes. The cobbler's children need
Exactly. But my wide beds, what I affectionately call my wide beds, is where we're going to be going. It is the ultimate way of growing food. I need to spend less than 3 minutes a year weeding. So I don't have to have much time. So I'm very practical, and so I want to work. We're going to start with, I don't care what your budget is. If your budget is zero, I can still, you can still double the capacity of your garden with no money. And we're going to show you right now how to do that. Oh, let me think here. So there is, the master gardener's got it right. There is a silver bullet. What's the silver bullet for soil? If you have a problem with your soil, what is the silver bullet? Well, nitrogen, organic material. Organic material. They've got that right. Oh, and we'll see if my computer catches up here. I have a beautiful picture here. I think I can get it. You can involve the whole family. Start them young in your gardening process of putting leaves all over your garden. Start them young. Get your grandkids. Isn't that sweet? I had to show that. That was just too sweet. Or you can involve your whole, you can bring all your friends. How cool is that? And you can spread, look how much fun. Make this, remember we started out, do you enjoy the sunset or even a campfire, or how about all your friends? Invite your friends over. Let's throw leaves all over the garden. I'm making this very practical, aren't I? And fun. Gardening should not be drudgery. It should be fun. Those are free minerals. Spread them, mulch them. No thicker than, and you don't have to run a rototiller, I'm sorry, a mower on the garden ones. Just throw a few leaves, an inch and a half or something. Although you could mow them before you throw them on. Pretty hard to mow them once they're in your garden. And so, free minerals. The earthworms will love you. Everything. Everything. So leaves are excellent for your garden, but they do decompose slowly. So shred them, you know, if you can. It's not the easiest thing because then you have to move them again and again and all that. But leaves are also high in carbon and guess what your friend is in your garden? One of your best friends is carbon. Okay, I'm going to show you several ways that you can improve your garden efficiency. We have already looked at the first two, and some of you are already doing very well and need a little improvement there. We've also briefly looked at the first two, and we'll add more information about those areas as we go. So we've looked at improving the quality of the soil, which in turn improves the quality of the produce. So now I'm going to show you how you can have more harvest. Because are we not heading into a time of trouble? Is it going to be difficult to have food? Yes. Do you have friends you'd like to help feed? Yes. That's the point of the seminar. If you're going to do it for yourself, you're in the wrong seminar. Right? Seriously. If you're growing your garden just for yourself, you're in the wrong seminar. It's about helping other people. If you help other people, God will be there beside you. And guess what He's going to be doing? He's going to take your addition and He's going to multiply it. And you'll be able to help feed many, many, many people in the time of crisis. That is why I'm doing this seminar. For those of you who were here last night, our mission is not to go and find a cabin in the woods and make a big garden. We have a message to the world. All right, so we're going to look at number 3, how to double or triple your harvest. Here's the nuts and bolts that you guys have all been asking about and waiting for, some of you very patiently. How many? For every, now, we need to look at one more thing. So for every foot of root structure, we've already had this slide. How many feet? 500 to 700 feet of mycorrhiza. So as we start, we need to consider all that we've learned and planned ways to take advantage of the knowledge gained. In my journey of relearning how to garden, I have tongue-in-cheek come up with this whole white man not very smart method of gardening. So we've already talked about that. In the Bible, we saw Elijah calling Elisha, and what was Elisha doing? He was tilling. Again, I think it's more healthy for you than the soil, but you know what? I can't dish the Bible, and so, but I have looked at, shown you what I know and have learned about the system. The Bible also says we have an enemy who what? Works to counterfeit everything that God's done. So Satan decided that, hey, let's till the soil. So we learned in the 1930s, and they admitted it. It was mechanical tilling that caused all of that. All that black carbon in the sky was caused from mechanical tilling. They admitted that. Thank you for admitting that. Andrew McGuire, tilling the soil is the equivalent of an earthquake, a hurricane, tornado, and forest fire occurring simultaneously to the world of the soil organism. Simply stated, tillage is bad for the soil. I didn't realize I had that slide in there. So at this point, we don't need wide rows now, do we? What's the disadvantage of wide rows? God has trained weeds to do what? Repair the soil. Repair the soil. I like to use the word repair because that's what they're doing. So now we don't have to have wide rows to walk on, do we? The reason, and I go over this, the reason what I call the white man method of gardening doesn't work, if you start planting plants too close together, what happens? It doesn't work. Why doesn't it happen? Because the whole system that we're talking about, if you rototiller, it's not there. So you start putting plant scores together, the mycorrhiza's not there to go get minerals and nutrients, what's going to happen? The plants fight with each other. You have a crippled experience in your garden. The whole garden is a mess of weeds and small produce fighting for minerals and nutrients. This chart changed everything about how I garden. How I could take an agriculture course and miss this, I don't know. What are some of your favorite things? Like broccoli, cabbage, cauliflower, the things that Adventists grow, potatoes? Do you see how big a root system they have? 12 to 18 inches. So here's 18 inches. What do you think? How much soil do you have in your average garden? Maybe this much? Some of us, I'm talking soil, not dirt. We all have a lot of dirt in our garden, but soil. Most of us are lucky to have 3 inches. Well, if you have 3 inches of soil and a whole bunch of dirt below that, where are those roots going to go?
Can you go back? Go back.
Would you like to get a picture of that? You can get this anywhere online. Just Google garden plant root chart. Oh, there we go. Well, no, it's called, just Google garden plant root chart. And this will come up with 100 other ones. Just remember this. Most of the food that we grow has between a foot and 18 inches of root. Where are you going to put that root? Now, if the reason I showed the mycorrhiza chart just now, if there's 500 or 700 feet of mycorrhiza for every foot, where is that going to go? In the white man, not very smart method of gardening. Because you've just rototilled everything all up, you've killed all that mycorrhiza, it wants to come back, but now you've got hardpan in the soil, and you've got this soil mixed with dirt, and where are the nutrients going to come from? So this is why I believe God wanted me to do the seminar. So I asked AI to do this. I was going to use my own garden, but problem is I don't have enough ideas because I've discovered this new way of growing, and I'm going to do everything I do that same method. So I had to come up with AI. And so here's 4 that I really liked. So here's the first one. So how thick is that topsoil in your garden? Maybe this much. Isn't that interesting? The only thing is that I asked AI to do me a garden using straw and manure. They put the manure down where the last place you'd want it. You don't want it in the middle. You don't want it touching your plants. If you let manure touch your plants, it'll take them out. It's on its way to turning to pure carbon. It's mostly carbon now, but it's on its way to turning pure carbon, and it will take out anything green that it touches. It will, but you can put it within an inch of your lettuce or broccoli or whatever, as long as you're not crowding it around it. I've put it very close with no ill results whatsoever. So what you want actually is to get that manure up on the pile and get the straw down in the valley. What will that straw do? Weed suppression, right? You need about 4 inches of it probably for weed suppression. But do you think that'll work? It does. Because plants need what's called the sunlight for photosynthesis. So if you're finding that the weeds are coming through, well, you just need to add a little bit more straw. And you can get straw really cheap. There's moldy straw, moldy hay. Hay's even better. Hay has more nitrogen by far. So if you use hay, you're actually feeding nitrogen into the soil. Is that a good thing? Yes. So this method here, I'm going to go ahead, whoops, I went too far. What do you think? So you can see the, we'll just say dirt and soil. There's a difference between dirt and soil, right? So the dirt is, how much carbon is in that dirt? Yeah, the lowest part. Very, very little carbon. This is your topsoil up here. What I'm suggesting you do, actually, I'll jump ahead to make it even clearer. Whoops, sorry. There it is. If you want to use the principles that we've learned and double your production, what you do is you go, those are called mounds, right? If you went out in your garden and did that, guess what you just did? You moved the soil, the usable soil that you've got. You will never run a rototiller through that again, but you can keep building up hay, put little manure if you have it in the fall over the top of the mounds and let that all, then you can cover that manure with what? Minerals that we call leaves. Isn't this amazing? Does this sound like God's method of gardening? A lot more than the white man, not very smart method, because what we do is we destroy the soil, then we invite the weeds to come over and take over our garden. You see why I call it the white man, not very smart method of gardening? Because we've all been deceived, all of us, by tradition. We have followed tradition. So what we're going to do is we're starting here because this is entry level. You can see how you can double your production very easily, right? Because now you're not walking on 950 square feet of your soil. You've taken your soil, you've put it into mounds, usable mounds. Guess what? Do you think a broccoli will have any trouble growing in that? There's room for it to go. Do you think there's room for the mycorrhiza to go and just bring a whole bunch of, you can see how you can double your production for no money spent. And if we were started this at a young age, what would be the benefit to us? We'd be strong and we'd be able to go out in our gardens and we'd be able to do this, and it's better for our health. But now we'll have to hire our grandkids to do it. Some of us will. God has really blessed me, and I still have strength, and I still do this kind of stuff all the time. And that's a blessing from God. So, method one, what do you think? Anybody want to get a picture of that before we go on? Or I can catch you later, and we can. So that's one thing. I'm going to throw out several ideas so you can adopt what you want to do and make it look like what you want to do. There's another one. So now we're heading towards commercial gardening almost, aren't we? A little bit. Oh, and by the way, don't plant your seeds in that fresh manure. This is AI. And I had to put these slides together in very short time. And so I didn't have enough time to go in and do a bunch of editing. But what do you think of this?
Looks nice.
And they got the straw in the right place. And in the fall, if you have your garden looking like this in the fall with a bunch of manure and whatnot, and then add all those leaves, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm just throwing out ideas that are meeting you where you're at, and you pick which one suits your needs. How many times do you think the production level are we looking at compared to the white man not very smart method of growing? I would say, what, 3 or 4 times more, if not more than that? Certainly 3, 4 times, I would think. More production are the same square feet. What about weeds? Do you think weeds are a problem in that? Not really. You've suppressed them. And every fall, when you put your manure on, a little bit of that, or your soil that you make, and then your minerals, your leaves, you can see how much weeding do you think you're going to have? Not a whole lot. Do you think you're going to need any spray in that garden? None. None. And this is why God took the seminar away from me for a while. Because he had to show me this, because I didn't know this. I'm a Canadian farm boy. We know weeds, rototillers, spray, chemical fertilizer. We know all that. Maybe, can we hold it? All right, well, we'll take one or two, but we got to keep going. I'm not sure. How's our time?
At this time, if you want to make your soil alkaline, because you're too acidic for pine needles and fir needles,
Oh,
how do you make it more alkaline at this point?
how do you make it more alkaline? There are, yeah. I'm not gonna take that question right now because I'm gonna show you an even better way of doing it, the way I do it. But I don't use manure that's like that. The manure I use is much more aged and, again, this is AI. Really, what you'd want to do is just use more aged to begin with, and then when you mix your nitrogen in the ratio that you're supposed to, somehow God seems to work it and balance it all out. I have had no problem with pH level. I can grow anything in there. We'll show you in a few minutes some broccoli that I grew.
I just wanted to say, brother, that it's important to keep your paths in the same place at each year. Don't keep moving them. Because you're putting your soil there.
Oh, here's the other thing. Yeah. So here's the other thing. Yeah, agreed. And keep your aisles narrow. The narrower they are, the less problem you're going to have with weeds, and the more room for production. There was one more thing. I'll think of it before we're done. Here's similar thing, just a little different. Pretty much same as what we looked at. And you got to remember, fresh manure is not, you can't plant plants in fresh manure. So let's keep that in mind.
Down in the fall, so we can.
If you, yeah, I have found that I've put some pretty raw manure in the fall, and by spring, I have yet to lose a plant that I'm aware of by having pretty fresh manure put in the fall. I've yet to have any issues in my gardening experience so far. There are warnings on the internet about different, what are they called, that you can get. I mean, there's things in manure that you don't want in your food, right? So,
My kids and I did this in the South using, we dug cotton seed meal into.
oh, cottonseed meal. Ellen White's method has that. Yes, correct.
What takes the place of that when that's not, I mean, in the South that was handled. What do you do as opposed to that?
Oh, I'm not sure. I didn't hear the question, but we'll have a question and answer after.
She said, if you can't get that, what can you get to replace it?
You are only a mouse click away from being a genius, because here's the key. I could tell you a product that might not be available in your area, et cetera, or you look and you go, I can't afford that. Believe me, I can't afford that comes up a lot. There's a product called, you've heard of a pre-emergent weed killer, kills them as they come up. Well, of course, we're not going to use that, but God has a natural one. It is called corn gluten. I went to look for corn gluten, and guess what I found out? My budget wouldn't allow what I found, so I just prayed and I said, well, God, there's got to be something cheaper than that. And I found like 50 pounds of it for something like 35 bucks. But at first it was like $150, $200, and I'm going, for 50 pounds, are you kidding me? So you can put corn gluten either on your lawn, or you can use it in your garden or in your flower beds. And as the weeds come up, I don't have this in this presentation because I knew I already had lots of stuff. But what it does is it attaches itself to the weed and basically takes all the moisture out of the weed. And then guess what it does? After that is all wrapped up and the weed seeds are no longer viable, then it turns into nitrogen. Isn't God good? So there's the picture of what I'm asking you to do, something like that. Rake as much of the top soil that's more black into the pile, right? Pretty straightforward. And then you can walk on the dirt. I have no problem with you walking on dirt. But dirt is brown or pale tan. your plants need to have a little, like gardeners know that plants do grow in that little bit and go searching around. And so it's not that it's bad, it's just that it's not the best. So here is another thing you can do if you don't want to use straw. You can use what? Mulches of all kinds of, you can get some nice looking. I guess you could even add some, as you get old, leaf mold. You could add some leaf mold if you really wanted, a little bit, but don't overdo leaf mold. You could use all manner of stuff in between. A little bit of sawdust, yeah. But you'll start changing your pH level, I suppose, you know, if you get too much. So we already looked at that. But that's basically step one, level one of how you can make a huge improvement in your garden. Amen? I think you guys all got that. Pretty basic, pretty straightforward. Doesn't have to cost you anything. So that's where I start. Look at how you can grow. What do you think about weeds in that situation? Weeds are not very happy, are they? Yeah, and we already talked about not having enough nutrients for heavy feeders such as tomatoes, corn, etc. You have to be careful, and I talked just a little bit about it, because if you hill the soil and make the mounds, you will have the nutrients and everything that you need to do this right here, but you'll probably have a little wider rows. But what I would do is I'd put two together and then have a row, couple, or even three. Yeah. This happens to be my garden. It's 4 feet wide, 30 feet long, 35 feet long, 2.5 to 3 feet deep. Does it look pretty happy? You think the weeds are happy? The weeds are not happy. I don't have 5 minutes of weeding a year in 70 feet of that. But it takes a special method that we're saving for last. There's my Bible, and that broccoli is bigger than a soccer ball. So we're starting with, I'm meeting everyone where we can start with no budget, and this one costs money. It costs you a bit of money to do this, but we're going to work our way there. So here we go. What do you think of this? What do you think the weeds are thinking in this operation? Weed suppression is the key. You plant the garden so thick like this. So what would you do? So now let's say you made it through the summer, you took your harvest off. What would you do in the fall? Do you think any nutrients were taken out of the soil and then went into your refrigerator? So we need to restore those, don't we? So how would you do that? Yeah, we get your rototiller out there and rototill in some leaves. Hey, I'm glad you guys are listening. And so yeah, if you can get some manures that don't have antibiotics, like a lot of the dairy ones might, you need to find out. You need to talk to the people that are actually buying it from or getting it from, and find out that there's no antibiotics. But you can get your manures. We're blessed because we have all these goats. So then you can put the leaves on, cover that, and just let it sit. Let the earthworms go to work for you. How cool is that? You need a spray can for this type of gardening? If you have big wide rows, you will. No, you don't want a spray can. Here's another way. I'm just throwing out several ideas to inspire you, and you can look at whatever you want to do. But notice how narrow the rows are. Why would you do that? The wider the rows, you've just invited more and more weeds. What do you think of this? Are the weeds happy with this way of gardening? Nope, they're not. Would you be happy with this way of gardening? I would. Isn't God good? This is using God's method of gardening. You need to build up the soil every fall. So Okay, yeah. So the next step would be raised beds. So we're moving up, costs more money, more commitment, all that. So raised beds, wonderful step in a really good direction, right? So why am I going to tell you that I want to see a minimum of 2 feet in your raised bed? What do you think? I've already given you the answer as we started. It was on a chart. Root depth. If you've got 18 inches of root, why would you have 6 inches high of soil? Does that make sense? Not really. So I'm going to show you the 2 optimum ways of growing using what I've learned. And this is one. The further north you live, like if you lived up in northern British Columbia where I'm from, and you can have snow right down to the end of April, some years, not every year, but a lot of years. We can even get snow on that long May weekend, about 1 out of 7 years. Crazy. We love it up there. It's hard. It was hard for my wife to pry me down here, I'll tell you. But it was hard to move and easy to stay. So if you're way up north, the advantage of a raised bed is obvious. It's going to warm up faster in the spring. Is that an advantage here in Southern Oregon? Is it an advantage in California? It's a huge disadvantage because what happens is the soil warms up. What happens to the moisture? Evaporation. So this is we've kind of graduated through a bunch of ideas that I've thrown at you as to how you can incorporate some of these ideas in your own experience. And I've started with no dollars, just some work. And then now this is gonna cost you a bit to do. And then we're gonna show you how to fill those. Most people think, oh, I'm just gonna go down to the local landscape supplier and I'm gonna buy a pickup load of soil. It'll work, it'll grow food, but we can do a lot better. So I'm gonna show you a little bit about that. Lasagna gardening. You've probably heard of that. It's also called sheet mulching. It's a no-dig, no-till method. Ooh, where did I hear that before? Building rich, nutrient-dense soil right on top of your existing ground. How cool is that? By alternating high-carbon brown and high-nitrogen green organic materials, you can create a composting system that breaks down into ideal growing soil. Nitrogen, carbon, building blocks of the soil. For gardener's purpose, what color is nitrogen? Green. For gardener's purposes. What color is carbon? Brown. If you've got some really, really rich stuff that looks more black, you've got a lot of carbon then, don't you? Start by laying down, they're saying 4 to 6 sheets of newspaper or layer of unprinted, untaped cardboard directly over your existing grass, weeds, and soil. This smothers out the existing growth. Well, let me ask you, if you were going to do a 6-inch raised bed, would that be a big deal? Yeah, it would. If you were going to do 2 feet to 32 inches, would that even matter? What are you actually hiding? You're hiding nitrogen. So if you're going to do a 2-foot raised bed, I wouldn't worry about the newspaper. You might want to worry about what? Any critters crawling around in your area? Gophers, rats, all manner of little creatures. So you could get some of that 1/4 inch, or I suppose you could use 1/2 inch screen and put underneath your raised bed. Staple it to it so they can't sneak through there, and away you go. Oh, do I have a helper here? Thank you. Yeah, we did that yesterday. Sorry about that. and we're going to get that raised. So, so you want to alternate. What does anyone remember the ratio that you want to alternate carbon to? 25, yeah, to 30% nitrogen, and the rest is carbon. Some people just say, well, 2 scoops of this and 1 of the other. So if you're making compost and composting, 2 scoops, 1. If you have a backhoe, it's a little more complicated. You have to.
2 scoops brown to 1 scoop green.
1 scoop green. The green is in the minority. It's fuel and it's hot. Yep. And it will make a slimy mess if you go 50% or more, like my friend Dan, who did nothing but green. I should have taken pictures of it. It was quite a sight and smell to behold. Oh, well, no, we won't do that. So the nitrogen layer, greens, anyway, we're going to move ahead into the picture of it. There it is. And you can find this all over the internet. I just had AI do this one for me. So you've heard of Hugel culture, where they use wood in the bottom. So the AI threw some of that in the bottom. It doesn't hurt anything. I wish I had a picture. I was going to do a little short, get my wife to take a video. This method of gardening, whether you do it in a raised bed or whether you do it in the ground like we're going to do now, I've been doing it for 4 years. I've been overplanting just to prove a point of how thick you can plant plants. I plant them ridiculously thick. Anybody that knows anything about the white man's method of gardening would think I'm nuts, because you couldn't do it with the white man's not very smart method of gardening. As long as that plant can get sunlight, you're going to have an amazing, because they're not competing. But I can walk up, and you know them little tomato stakes they have that are green? I think they're tin foil with green plastic wrapped around them. For the last 4 years, I've been able to walk up with one of them, and you know how weak those things are. I can poke them anywhere 2.5 feet in my beds, and you'll be able to do the same as this. But I have no wood at the bottom. So if you want to do wood, like if you live in Idaho, I met some people from Idaho, you might want to throw a bunch of that wood. If you don't have the wood, leave it out. It's not that important. So what do you think? So you can Google this. So my job is not, I've done the hard work, but now it's going to be your turn to do, because like you got to work in your own garden and plan your own thing. So you can go online and you can find all manner of lasagna type, but you want the lasagna type, or I'll show you what I'm doing. It's a simple lasagna. I do things simple. And this one's much more complicated. You don't have to get complicated. Don't get stressed about it. God is very forgiving. If you get the carbon-nitrogen ratio even close, you're going to have amazing results. So don't get too picky about, oh, I need to do this and I got to add that. Go enjoy your garden, right? So I promised you 5 things. Have I delivered? I promised you improving the quality of the soil. Yes. How about improving the quality of the produce? Absolutely. Only God can do any of this, right? It's his seminar. Did I show you how to have more harvest? Yes. Isn't that amazing? How you can double your harvest, triple it. These wide beds, I think I'm somewhere between 6 and 8 times as much as you can grow in the traditional method. And it's healthy. How about using specialized gardening techniques for weed suppression? Did I deliver on that? On any budget, even 0. Isn't God good? All right, so I'm going to now show you the optimum, even though it looks like a mess when you start. This is, in my opinion, from what I have learned, the optimum way of growing food. This will not let you down. So that, it doesn't look like it. Your camera doesn't give you much depth perception. That's 4 feet wide and between 2.5 and 3 feet deep. And this is where my wife thought that my gardening seminar was getting a little too carried away with, here I was, but she repented of that. Because when she saw what we grew, why did I go down 2.5 to 3 feet? The root and the mycorrhiza. And you think the earthworms are happy too? Absolutely, because there's night crawlers that go down deep. Everybody's happy when you do this, but this requires a lot, a bit more money, although it's not that expensive. The backhoe work isn't really, because I had the backhoe, I would dig 15, 20 feet and then haul all my stuff in and then do my next 20 feet. If you hired a backhoe, I guess to keep costs down, he'd have to go do the whole thing, and then you'd have to take wheelbarrows. This way I was able to use my front end loader and just fill the trench. So it costs money for a backhoe, or if you have one. So what did I add in the bottom? Now technically I could have added carbon. Most of the diagrams I saw added carbon first. I really don't care which you add first. If you're going to do blackberries, which I delight to bury them on the bottom. They'll never see the light of day, and I take great joy. Us Canadian farmers, we take great joy whenever we can take nitrogen away from weeds. So by burying that blackberry down that low, so what do you think I'm going to add next? Something brown. Carbon, something brown. I did nitrogen at the bottom. There it is. And again, those were just some weeds that I had handy, grass. I actually went out and mowed the pasture there and took a bunch of that and threw it in there. Then my wife was cleaning her barn, so guess what I got? Goat manure. How cool is that? And so I'm doing a very simple one. I'm just doing goat manure weeds until I get up to this point. And then guess what I'm going to add? I make between 10 and 20 yards of soil every year out of goat manure and what do you call them, from the power lines and whatnot, the wood chips. And my friend works for Pacific Power, so I know where the wood chips come and whether they're safe a little bit. And so, what do you think? The goat manure was fresh. Oh, no, I made soil. That involves taking, I can make it in the fastest I ever made it, I think I mentioned, was 3 weeks. Normally a couple, 3 months, I usually. I'm doing them with Aaron. I'm turning them with my backhoe because when you have a backhoe, it's quite a blessing. And I'm a Canadian farm boy and we love tractors. I mean, I was driving a tractor, I think, before I went to school. Of course, Dad was helping there just a little bit, And so there it is, after you plant. That was my first year, I think, maybe, back a ways. There it is in about June or so. What do you think? That is one floret of broccoli. And it came up out of that jungle. And for those of you who have grown food, and when you ever have abnormally large food, what have you noticed about it? Generally, the flavor isn't there. It doesn't taste, it's woody, a whole bunch of things that go wrong, right? That is the best broccoli I've ever tasted. And my mom, we grew up in northern British Columbia, and we had really tasty products up there. That was one of the blessings that God did give man up there in the north, is we have extremely good garden soil, even though we destroy it. Anyway, it tastes better than any broccoli I ever remember eating. But guess what? One of the first slides we read about how Adam and Eve worked in the garden and God was their teacher, and then we talked about how at the end of time here, when we invite God into our garden, what's going to happen? He'll be there with us and he'll teach us. Has God been teaching you during this seminar? Amen. By God's grace, we're all learning and growing. And so we're almost through the slides, so we can have a question and answer. I do not have all the answers. All I know is I know more than I used to. And, oh, hey, I didn't know this was, oh, we'll come back and listen to this. Oh, I guess not. I guess we're going to listen to it now. If we have volume.
Benefit that's existed for over 450 million years. Mycorrhiza is the term used to describe the symbiotic relationship between mycorrhizal fungi and a plant's root system. First, the spore of mycorrhizal fungi germinate in the soil and make their way to the nearest roots. The roots are then colonized by the fungi, and mycorrhiza are established. The fungi penetrate the root and create an internal network of fungal structures inside the root cells, where the plant and mycorrhizae exchange sugars and nutrients. Finally, the hyphae continue to develop outside the roots, forming an extended network of fine filaments, which cover up to 700 times more soil area than the plant's own roots. This secondary root system draws in extra beneficial nutrients and water, supporting a plant or tree for its entire lifetime.
That was short. All right. Oh. We're going to go, if I can skip through this one, we're going to come back to this one, though. Well, I guess we're not.
I'm here.
And if you've been following along on our previous videos, you'll know that we've been really busy all summer doing a lot of really hard work trying to get our little homestead going. Trying to dig trenches, fill them with wood, cover them with dirt, just so that we can grow some plants. So far that's worked out really well, but we've also been reading a lot about another method which is way easier. It's called the Ruth Stout method, and it's all about the hay.
So today, we're gonna play
In the hay. But before we get started, let's have a quick recap of our garden experimentation thus far. We started out in the spring by building a hugelkultur mound. Hugelkultur is a method of permaculture that emulates the natural processes found in a typical forest. We've created several videos which explain in detail how this works, but essentially we dug a trench, filled it with dead and rotting wood, a bunch of other organic material, and then buried it all with the topsoil that we'd removed from the trench in the first place. The end result was a self-fertilizing vegetable garden that requires little water, no weeding, and provides an abundance of food. By the end of the growing season, we were so impressed by the results of our hugelkultur mound that we decided to build 2 more, but this time with the help of a backhoe. As you can see, we've now smoothed out the soil on the new mounds and covered them with a protective layer of hay so that we're ready to plant next spring. But as you can also see, we've got a lot of extra room in our garden area. And that brings us to another method of permaculture, known as the Ruth Stout method. Now let me tell you a little bit about Ruth, because honestly, she was incredible. She was born in Kansas in 1884, but moved to New York when she was 18. While there, she dabbled in an eclectic assortment of jobs. For instance, she worked as a nurse, a bookkeeper, a secretary, a business manager, a factory worker, a lecturer, and debate coordinator. She opened a small tea shop, worked for a fake mind-reading act, and as if that wasn't enough, she even spent some time in Russia in the early 1920s to assist in famine relief. But it wasn't until 1930, when she and her new husband settled down on a 55-acre farm in Connecticut, that she finally found her true passion: gardening. For over a decade, she followed conventional gardening wisdom by using plows, tillers, chemical fertilizers, and lots of hard work. But one day in early spring, while waiting for her plowman to show up, she had an epiphany. If so many other plants grow easily without any of these unnatural additions, why couldn't she just treat her garden the same way? So she threw some seeds on her unplowed soil, covered them lightly, and was astonished by the results. What she discovered is that most of the traditional hard work of gardening was completely unnecessary, and in many cases even detrimental to the success of her harvests. Over time, she refined her method of lazy gardening and concluded that by simply covering her seeds in a thick layer of mulch, she could avoid all digging, tilling, weeding, watering, and fertilizing. Ruth would later say that,
I don't do anything I don't want to do unless I have to, and I don't have to. So there we are.
she experimented with many types of natural mulches, but found that good old-fashioned hay was the best. The basic premise behind the Ruth Stout method is quite simple. Cover the ground with hay. When asked how much hay was needed, Ruth would stoically reply, more. Over time, the lower layers decompose and naturally add nutrients to the soil. Meanwhile, the upper layers help to keep the soil cool in the summer, warm in the winter, prevent evaporation between rains, and smother out any weeds. It's recommended that you prepare this type of garden in the fall and then begin planting the following spring by simply pushing some of the hay aside and laying the seeds on the fresh, fertile soil underneath. Every spring and fall, more hay is added and the cycle continues. This is what's often referred to as building soil, because every time a new layer of hay is added, it replaces the bulk of the previous year's mulch, which is since composted into rich organic soil for planting. And once again, you never dig, till, water, or weed. No fertilizers are necessary, and rather than becoming depleted over time, your soil nutrients actually improve with every passing season. So it was armed with this information that we set out to find a local source of inexpensive hay. And luckily for us, our brother-in-law Andy, who you might remember as the grower of the giant white Armenian cucumber, knew exactly who to ask. As it turns out, his parents had a huge amount of hay in the loft of their barn which had accidentally gotten wet, meaning it was no longer appropriate for animal feed. But spoiled hay still makes perfect mulch, so we drove out to the farm, crammed as much as we could into Andy's truck, and brought it back to our place. Okay, now that we have everything we need, let's get gardening. You may recall that our garden layout includes space for 6 30-foot by 4-foot raised beds, as well as one larger bed. These 3 have already been used for hugelkultur mounds, and in the interest of experimentation, we've decided to use these 2 spaces for Ruth Stout-based hay-only gardens. We began by marking the perimeter of the beds with string. This was just so that we could keep all of the hay contained within our desired dimensions. Next, we carried over a couple of bales, cut the twine, and began pulling them apart. We did our best to fluff up the tightly packed hay as we went, and slowly laid out the first layer. From what we've read, 8 inches seems to be a good depth when first constructing the garden bed, and in the interest of keeping things consistent, we created a simple measuring stick. Then, by plunging the stick into the garden in different locations, we could quickly and easily see that a second layer was necessary. So, back to the hay bales for more mulch, and after a few more minutes of fluffing and layering, we measured again, and we're good to go. So there we go. 2 Ruth Stout gardens, both complete in less than an hour. So what do you think? Was that easier than hugelkultur?
Yes.
So now, unfortunately, we'll have to wait until next year to see if they work as well as hugelkultur, but they're definitely easier to set up. And you may notice that we've still got space for one more of these long gardens over there, and a big one behind us, but you'll have to wait to see what we do with that. See you next time. Oh wait, there's one more thing I'd like to mention about Ruth Stout before you go. And this is perhaps the most important part. You see, despite all the interesting things she did during her youth, Ruth was 45 years old before she'd ever even thought about gardening. And she was in her 60s before discovering the method which would later adopt her name and make her famous. And even with such a late start, Ruth lived to be 96, which meant she had over 3 decades to publish multiple books, go on countless speaking tours, and explore and share her passion with everyone she encountered. I point this out because I think it's a really good reminder that it's never too late to try something new, find your passion, and make a difference. So no matter where you are in your journey, I encourage you to get out there and plant some seeds, because you just never know what might grow.
Isn't that good? Well, we're almost at the end of the slides. She gained a very large following. So, what if a crisis hit this country? Do you think one just might be coming? And we had to rely on our own garden? If your garden looks something like out behind the tent here or over here, you could turn that into this so quickly. And how long did it take them? Less than an hour? Well, it took more than that because they had to get the hay first. Do you see the possibilities that God has presented to us that we can use, that He can bless? And how many weeds do you think she had to pick? Weed suppression is the key. Don't oppress them with a weed sprayer. There's times you may have to. I have a fence line that I'm still struggling. God hasn't given me the answer for my fence line yet because we have a goat pasture and I am fighting them weeds. Oh boy, I have to spend about 6 to 8 hours a year with my weed whacker just on the fence line I have. And because you do it once and then 3 weeks later you're doing it again. And then, oh, not with the fence we have. I'm talking a half a mile of fence line. That might take a while. So I'm looking for, I'm going to get my tiller out there and my spray guns, and we're gonna get after them here, right after camp meeting. No, at least now I know how not to do it, right? We're not survivalists, but we want to help other people, don't we? Yeah. So for me, after everything I've learned, there's no question, the 2 to 3 foot wide bed, I call it a wide bed. I'm going to come up with another name because it's actually not wide. It's a deep bed, and deep bed just sounds weird. So I haven't, maybe if someone has a good name, I'll gladly take you up on that. I'd like to come up with a name to call it because you get more with less. No, actually you get less is bed. And so that is the best of the best that I know of with what God has taught me. Seconded by the raised beds. The raised beds are actually even better maybe if you live way up north and you want that soil to warm up in the spring because it gives you a little earlier start. That's a bonus. It doesn't get hot up there. Like, it's pretty rare that I don't remember if I ever saw 100 above up there, maybe once or twice in my life. 75, 85 above a lot all summer. Yeah, it's really, really tough to survive those Canadian summers. It's the winters that are the issue. And so, yeah, we're just wrapping it up. We got 1 or 2 more slides. So for undisturbed soil, nobody's even close to what this Ruth Stout method is. Beautiful, simple, easy. There's what it can look like. So it's very easy to reclaim something that looks like that right there, or that out there. Mow it first. Just mow it down. Throw your straw, and away you go. And me, because I like living on the edge, I would even not be afraid to tackle that. I believe you'd have good success right there. Because you'd mow it down really good. You're going to need 10 inches of hay to suppress that. But given enough hay, if you put cardboard, what are earthworms, one of their favorite foods? Earthworms love cardboard. So they'll eventually eat that all up for you. So it'll suppress, if you've got some nasty weeds, like let's say some dandelions will poke their way up through a lot. including cardboard, but you know, it wouldn't hurt anything. I have a roost out method in my garden. I did not use any cardboard. And I just did it because I wanted to experiment. If I'm going to teach something, I like to at least have is this. Water. Won't work. If you have something that looks like that for more than a month of the year, it's not going to. There it is. So if you have enjoyed this seminar and want me back, you could, you know, let certain people know that. And you know, otherwise he has no idea if you even enjoyed it, but, you know, so you could let Brian or somebody know if you wanted to. If you wanted me to come back, I'd be willing to do that. And so we'll take a few questions, and I don't have the answers, all of them, but I you know. Okay. We'll just start here and kind of work our way around. How do you make leaf mold? God does a very good job of that. Yes. Okay, so I'll tell you how to find leaf mold because God makes that. So remember the hub trees that Elaine, Elaine is the other lady. Suzanne talked about the hub trees. The way you identify them is they're the biggest one around. Start there. That's where the most leaf mold will be, under the hub tree. Why? Well, because it's big, it's been there a long time. So that's the easiest way to get leaf mold. Drive around, look for the biggest tree, head for that. Okay, here.
Are you sure the earthworms are eating the compost or the cardboard, or are they eating the microbes that you built?
So she's asking, do the earthworms eat the cardboard or the microbes? I don't know. I actually had a little earthworm farm for a year or two. It was kind of fun. Wow, I earned the reputation of being the melon man in Grants Pass, and what would happen is we'd get fires. In fact, I see Marilyn's dad over here, he had the title before I did. He grew the best melons I ever had. And so earthworms, they love melons. And because of the fires, right at the time when you have photosynthesis, so I had a whole bunch of melons that weren't sweet. Well, the earthworms absolutely loved them. You would not believe how many earthworms you'd flip that melon over after a while. It was thousands of earthworms. They love it. And they do eat cardboard. I'm not sure why, but they'll go for my watermelons first, I promise you. I did not see thousands of earthworms on the cardboard, but I sure saw them in the melons. We'll just keep going through over here.
So I've already done all of the wrong things.
Yeah, I've done all the wrong things too. Yep.
Filled it down about that deep. The water just goes in it. Who
It's,
knows where it went?
yep, it's gone.
Every single day I have to water or the squash dies.
Correct.
So I'm definitely going to do these things that you're suggesting. Now my grandfather, 65 years ago, would fork the garden. He didn't
Yes,
use a tiller.
correct,
It was like a fork with flat tines.
correct.
He just broke the soil up that way.
And you're not flipping the soil around. You're breaking it just enough to let some oxygen in it. That is the only way I know of tilling the ground that's actually of some kind of benefit to the ground, maybe, because it needs oxygen. I have not tilled mine in 4 years, and I'll tell you what, it's producing like unbelievable. So if
For compost tea, he would compost his manure and
compost tea,
water and then put this tea on the plant.
so you can do two things with compost tea. Then, so just I want you to think. So if you're going to make some compost tea, and you're going to feed, let's say, your broccoli and your tomatoes, what would you use to make that compost tea? Greens and things? Compost the manure. That's what most people do. There's an even better way, and that works, okay? But if you want to really nail it, you know what you do? In the fall, you go grab all those tomato vines, what's left of the broccoli. Why would you do that? Remember, plants have the ability to communicate their needs, right? And the same ability that we have to communicate to one another here. So those plants have communicated through the mycorrhiza for certain vitamins. And if the scientists will tell you, that's why companion planting works. Different plants have different minerals and different vitamins. So what would happen if you took all the residue of that, made your tea out of that? Guess what you're feeding it? You're feeding it the very nutrients that it needs. Rather than using a shotgun approach, the shotgun approach will help because nitrogen is nitrogen. But if you use the plants to make, I think they call it jadam, and the bottom line is you're feeding the very minerals back to the plants that it is looking for. And so you can do that a couple of ways. I've done both. I will take and make the tea and just pour it right on. Oh, and the other thing is, yeah, we're going to do this. So the other thing I do is what I learned about growing melons, for those of you who like melons, they're heavy feeders. They're like, if you think of melons as teenage boys, you got to feed them every 15 minutes, right? For any of you who've raised teenage boys, I was one of them, so I know. And so melons are heavy, heavy feeders. So what I learned, at first I started off with chicken manure. Then I added kelp. Oh, I'll tell you what. You add kelp to your garden for your tomatoes. You want your tomatoes to double in size. Don't overdo it on the kelp, but the chicken manure, kelp. And then one day I woke up and I said, well, wait a minute. Why don't I add my wood ashes? Don't add your wood ashes if you start your fire with plastic bags and stuff like that, which I have been tempted to do on occasion. And so you don't want any chemicals in that. Then the other thing is I've even added a little bat guano only because I got a really cheap, a bunch of it at a garage sale, and I forget what we paid, a fraction of what it was worth. So bat guano. So bat guano, in my opinion, it's fine. It's a good product. It's very expensive for what it does. So what I do is I mix them in about 1-to-1 ratio. So let's say you've only go down to the Grange and buy your kelp. It's expensive, but you know what? Kelp will you will not believe. When you see what kelp does to your garden, you're going to go repeat, 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 because it turns everything green and it makes it grow fast. But don't overdo it. So I do 1 part chicken manure, organic chicken manure you can get, 1 part kelp, 1 part wood ashes. And then because I have it, I'll throw in the bat guano, 1-to-1. So if you've only got 3, you still do a 1-to-1 ratio. If you've got just 2, back off on the kelp a little bit, like do 2-to-1 2 chicken manure, 1 kelp. Like keep the kelp back a little bit. Don't overdo kelp. Don't overdo kelp. Don't get rabbit manure? No, I'm not sure. I can't comment on that. He's saying it's wonderful. I know I lived next door to the llama lady when I was in British Columbia, and those llamas have the best. They're really good. Over here. Yeah, you.
With the GMO thing, I was thinking
Yep.
the cottonseed mulch and the corn gluten, how do you make sure that's non-GMO? Are there products out there, or are there other
So, okay, and so the corn gluten, if you want to use it as a pre-emergent, if you're going to use that on your lawn, for example, which is where a lot of people, it wouldn't make any difference whatsoever, really. I mean, because you're not going to eat your lawn. In your flower beds, well, let's hope not, unless your name is King Nebuchadnezzar, maybe. But so it's the GMO part as far as that using the corn gluten as a pre-emergent. Next time I'm going to have slides and a living video on that of what it actually does. I have some slides on it here, but I was in a serious time crunch to get this presentation ready. I'll just say that. So if you want to use it in your garden, the truth is if you look at how the methods I've shown of weed suppression, chances are you'll never need it in your garden, right? So if you're going to use it on your lawn doesn't care. It's not going to hurt your lawn any.
Maybe there's no DNA in it. Maybe it's just the protein. Maybe it's the protein, or is it? Okay, my other.
Okay, we'll take this fellow over here, and we'll keep moving back.
Okay, so I wrote it to my garden.
Yep.
Dead. It's hard pan.
Yes, it will be.
Can I take a subsoil dirt and break it up?
So basically, I picked a number of ways of what you can do. So you have to kind of look at this. It is filmed now, so maybe we'll have a chance that you can watch this again. So the bottom line is, I could look at what you have and give you some advice, but every case is different, and we'll have a slightly different answer. So if you've destroyed your soil that way, well, you can still build it up and just start with where you're at. Or you could just say, you know what, I've really destroyed it, and you could just go with the Ruth Stout method if that's what you choose. So, or you could hire me, and I could bring my backhoe over, and I'll dig you a hole 3 feet deep, and we'll solve it very fast in just a couple of hours. So,
What about for the Ruth Stout method? She brings that hay in. What about the wheat seed in the hay?
what about what about the wheat seeds in the hay? Well, I am using the Ruth Stout method, but I'm using the goat manure that's on the hay. And of course, what is manure doing? It is taking out the weed seeds. Anything, it is on its way to turning carbon and will take out anything. So what you could do if you're really worried about that, you could just add some fresh manure. There's not as many weed seeds in straw as there is hay, right? Hay will have a lot more. That's a good question. I don't have all the answers. These folks have tried it. I watched the follow-up one, and they were real happy with it. The Ruth Stout method does work. Her answer is more hay. I have the answer. It's more hay. It's more hay. So there's your answer. So we have an answer from an authoritative source. More hay is your answer.
I used the hay thing, and
Yeah.
I used the older hay, like you were telling about, that wasn't good for the animals anymore. And I haven't had problems with the weeds or anything. I did get alfalfa, which is actually good because it helps build up the soil.
Yep.
But I wanted to comment about people that live in the higher altitudes that have the short growing season.
Yep.
That's what I have. And one thing that's really helped me a lot with my garden is my sister put me onto this heating pad thing that you use for starting the plants. So I start all the plants indoors, so they get a little bit bigger, so the slugs don't just wipe them out as soon as I put them out there. But that way I can extend my growing season by about a month because I'm shorter than other people that are lower elevation than I am.
Okay, so this is something that I had to leave out of this seminar that was in my first one.
It's been just night and day difference for me growing a garden because I
Yeah.
outside they never sprout or the animals.
So I'm gonna add this. So if you invite me back, I'll throw this next year at you. Planting by the moon. Anyone heard of that? And of course, she was talking about how can we have an early start for those who have a short growing season, planting by the moon. So think about it. I was a Canadian farm boy, and of course, I noticed that my mom would plant by the moon, and she'd harvest by the moon. I'm a farmer. I don't care. I mean, it tasted good. That's all I need to know. And so when I first got me started on these garden seminars, I ran into this. And does it work? Think about this. This is what God used. Well, first of all, I saw a documentary on television one time about a tide. I believe it was in Florida. And when there's a full moon, this tide will go up an extra 20 6 feet. The only difference is the full moon is there. So that was already kind of planted in my brain, and I'd never forgotten that. And so when this planting by the moon, I thought, well, I'm going to at least look at it. So you can go to Farmer's Almanac and places like that. And then, as I was praying about it, God revealed something to me. They call it the maple moon. So why is it that the sap all of a sudden starts running? What causes that to happen? Did it decide to say, well, I'm going to climb up all the way up the top of that tree and then I'm going to start flowing down? How did that sap get up there? Gravitational pull of the moon. The sap didn't just wake up and say, I'm going to climb up that tree and then start coming down through. No, it was the gravitational pull of the moon. And so that kind of got me to have just enough open mind to look and pursue it a little bit further. And we now, I had the reputation of being the melon man down there in Grants Pass. And I had very frustrating experience with growing watermelons. I was losing 2/3 of the seed that I planted. As a farmer, my dad sometimes was getting 100% germination, and always 94, 95, 96% of the seeds we plant would grow. I'm getting less than 30%. Very frustrating for a farmer to see that. So I thought, what am I doing wrong? I'm watering it. I'm doing everything. My soil is decent, although it was rototilled at that point, I guess. But so I looked at that and I said, well, what's wrong? So I started planting by the moon. Guess what my germination happened to it? It went up to over 70%. So that's my personal experience with it. But it's gravitational pull of the moon. So two things. It pulls the moisture out of the soil into the seed. The seed swells, and you can have germination in 3 days. Wow. That's impressive. For a farmer, that's impressive. No, it's actually go to Farmer's Almanac and get the chart. You have to actually plants to bear fruit as you're going in, plants that are in the ground, potato tubers after. And it's also based on the, what is it? It's been a while. The quarter moon or something is involved in this. Anyway, go to Farmer's Almanac on that one. Try it. My wife was so impressed with what she saw in my gardening experience. She starts breeding her goats now by the moon, and her number of takes has gone up dramatically. In other words, when you breed your goats, it went from a certain percentage up to about almost 100%. Breed them by the moon. And of course, remember the story of Jacob and all that, There's a lot of things, that story of Jacob, I still haven't, I don't get it. But one thing I do get about that story, there's a lot more that we don't know, right? There's a lot more. So I'm just working my way around here. We got a hand way back over there.
If you were going to start a new garden with 2 to 3 foot, 4 foot beds, and you have a serious gopher problem, my neighbor.
Oh, yeah.
How would you go about trying to mitigate that?
Perfect. So
how high up would you put the
yeah. So he's wanting to know if I do these, the one I call the wide bed. So what you would do for gophers, it's not that hard to deal with. So gophers and all these critters, if you Google it, which I did not have time to do, I was going to do it. But as a farmer and someone that has a backhoe, I can tell you what. I have not seen them dig any more than about 12 inches to 15 inches. I doubt they'll go 18 inches. I'm not sure. I didn't Google just to see. But they don't go that deep. So what you do is when you get that hole down there, they're not going to climb in from underneath. So you need no protection on the bottom if you go 2 feet or deeper. So then what you do is you go down on Google and you find bamboo barrier. It's a roll of heavy plastic. They're about 32 inches tall. And it's, remember those little toboggan things we had when we were kids? They rolled up and you're sliding down the hill. It's basically almost same material as that, a hair thicker. And you just put that barrier around. And then if you noticed, I had the white around mine. I put the white vinyl fence. And then you could even seal it to that if you really wanted to get fancy. And then start filling it in with dirt. So bamboo, weed barrier, all the way around the trench. Put your soil in. In fact, you know, an ideal way to do it would be to put your white vinyl first, attach that to the white vinyl, seal it with sealant if you want, put a few pop rivets or screws, whatever you want to do, to hold it just until you get the dirt in, and away you go. Is that good? Yeah. Bamboo barrier. It's designed to prevent bamboos from going from your house to your neighbor's house because usually they're not very happy when that happens. And I actually, I had a job that I actually did one time for a guy that was exactly, the bamboo was coming up 50 feet into this guy's lawn and he was getting a little tired of that. So I took my backhoe over there and we put bamboo barrier. I've done that in 2 different jobs now. Over here, the lady in the...
So I have 2 questions, but I want to answer this with Google.
Okay, you're going to answer it with Google.
So it says they typically run 4 to 18 inches below the surface, but their food storage chambers can dig as deep as 2 to 6 feet. And in our experience, they stay deep. Yeah.
Really?
They dig deep. We have, and that was one of my questions. What do you do with catacombs for rodents under your garden?
Yeah. So you're saying they'll actually go over 2 feet?
That's what this is telling me, 2 to 6 feet for their food chain.
And which rodents, did it say which ones will do that? I don't think.
I did for gophers.
Gophers, okay. So then what you would do is very simple. All you would do then is put the screen on the bottom. Yeah. Right? Just put screen on the bottom if you're worried about that. Or you could pour concrete. Well, no, don't pour concrete.
As an example, my neighbor planted 20 avocado trees. The gophers killed half of them already.
Wow. So that's a new one for me. Thank you for Googling that.
I do have another question
Yes.
beyond the rodent problem.
Yep.
What do you think about geofabric as weed suppressant?
Your typical Home Depot type of weed fabric?
Well, no, I've gotten some geofabric. It's actually tougher,
Yeah.
for like road beds.
Oh, yeah.
Them under raised gardens and in between my aisles.
So I actually used some heavy stuff like that in between my wide beds. A lot of the true organic people are not impressed with using any of that on your property, but I used it underneath my rows because I have to stop the weeds because they were designed to fill empty spaces. So you have to do something to stop those weeds in between those wide beds. Although a lot of people have a lot more time than I do, and they just go out there and stay ahead of the weeds, and like that's what the purists would do. I still have a lot of, cardboard. I still have a lot of farmer left in me that God's still trying to weed out. So, okay, well, over here.
Is there any uses for sawdust, like composting or your garden?
Sawdust, yes. So here's the thing about sawdust. Different species have different things, like pine, for example. What's in pine? I heard it. Turpentine, right? Turpentine. And so pine might not be your ideal, right? How about, I'll throw a name out we've been talking about. How about Doug fir? Sawdust. It's probably pretty good. The thing is, of course, it wants to push it towards acidic. So if you want to do blueberries, then you want one morning with sawdust. I was making some compost soil and using some wood ashes. But the big thing you have to watch out for, is if it came from a cabinet shop, boy, don't make sure you don't get any of that, because that glue will kill all this, and it'll take years. You almost have to dig it out with a backhoe to get rid of it, because it will. The problem is it will linger there. I think formaldehyde is one of the things in that. Some of them glues, depending on what. And so just be careful about cabinet shop sawdust. You want to find it from somebody that has a sawmill, and you're and stay away from cedar. Yeah. And so depending on where you live, but I think Doug fir is, so Emil over here has been sitting on the edge of a seat for a while.
I had few notes. I experimented with raised beds for a long time, and also I used to put, to protect from gophers, I used to put agricloth.
Agricloth for gophers.
Be sure it has to be ½ inch, not bigger than that, eye.
Oh, okay.
And that one, if you have acidic soil, that one it will go out too. So it will rust out, even though it's galvanized. So if you want to spend more money for long term, you buy stainless steel wire mesh.
Got you.
Okay.
Yep.
To build protozoa, for those who make who brew tea, so you can use worm casting, like 2 pounds per 1 gallon of water, and then you brew it for 24 hours.
Yep.
If you want to put bacteria in it, you throw some kelp, or you can throw some leaves also. But you have only 4 hours. You dilute it in 10% of fresh water, so 10 to 1, and you spray it on your fruits and vegetables. Fruit trees and vegetables.
Yeah.
But only 4 hours. Other than that, it will die. So.
I just realized we should have had a mic. That way you guys could have fought over the mic all the way through the crowd, and then we would have had it on the camera. So one thing that Emil pointed out is that a lot of the screen that we buy is made out of steel and will rot in time, whereas if you get stainless steel, it won't, but your wallet will hurt a little bit more. It'll hurt a lot more. They do make a expanded metal that they use, I think they call it lath, and you can get that at your stores that sell like bricks and things, masonry stuff. Home Depot has it too, and it's not real bad. I think it's $15 the last time I bought it for a 3x8. Are they, or 3x10? They might be 10. So I think they're they're only 2x10 is what they are, and for $15. So you can use that for screens underneath. Yeah, so Home Depot has it. I believe it's called lath. It's used in the mason. So if you hire somebody to do masonry work and they're going to do a chimney in your house, they will put this down first so that it all sticks together and stays in place. All right. Oh, one more. There.
How can I get rid of poison oak permanently?
Poison oak. I'm a Canadian farm boy, so moved to Canada. Trust me, you won't have any problems with it there. I don't know. Yeah, spray it and then hit it with your rototiller. That'll kill anything. Seriously. Does the
and then you chop it up and use it for get rid of your pain.
So I because I'm new enough to the area, I didn't grow up with it. But you're a mouse click away from being a genius. So there's probably some geniuses out there that have some ingenious ways of dealing with that.
They're recommending
Vinegar and salt. Yep. The area, yeah, the vinegar is not good on the soil. So she's saying to get rid of the poison oak. Oh, so yeah, so you could try the vinegar if it's in an area you're not ever going to grow anything. Again, you're a mouse click away from a genius. So the purpose of the seminar is to give you a bunch of information, but I don't have all the answers. And so I want to change the way you think about your approach to garden. Now, whose hand did I see right here? His hand. Okay. Yeah. Yep. So I'm going to have a section on, I do have a section on composting and making your own soil. And we didn't have time to complete what, I'm going to do another version of this seminar that's shorter and try and add planting by the moon and the compost one, because composting is really important if you want to do gardening. And so you need to study. You can do either aerobic or anaerobic. Oh, I also have a backhoe. A backhoe, well, there you go. Well, so she probably would, except you're too far away to go over there and dig all of her. Oh, you have a backhoe. We'll take a couple more questions and over. Okay. Oh, there. Okay, sorry. My wife will tell you I'm certifiably blind, okay? So if you're not in my direct line of vision, I won't see you. Yes, absolutely. Well, so what you do is you can let it go brown, then you know it's carbon. Then you can put it in a pile with a bunch of green, which is nitrogen. And it will, and if the moisture, it has to have enough moisture because it takes at least a bit. It doesn't take tons, but you have to have some there. So once you get the moisture content where, I couldn't tell you percentage-wise, but, probably 15, 20% or more percent water, mix in your fresh green and just stir it all together. And you can either put a piece of rebar or an old, some kind of a metal rod of any kind in that pile. That's the farmer's cheap method of way we used to tell if our grain was overheating. Or you can go down from Amazon for $20. You can get a really nice temperature gauge that's about 2 feet long. And you put that probe down in that pile and you watch the temperature come up. And that temperature, if you've got your nitrogen carbon ratio pretty even close, it'll get up to about 150, give or take 10. And so it'll hit 120 pretty easy. And then once it hits 130 to 140, it starts to eradicate most every weed seed. There's not a whole lot of weed seeds that can take 150. Oh, yeah. Well, so you can do both. So one is nitrogen and the other is carbon. But do put some, it's a lower form of nitrogen in terms of it's already on its way to turning carbon, right? But it's still a lot of nitrogen. So if you add some grass or weeds or whatever to get the whole pile heated up, and you can tell by the smell of the pile and by the temperature of the pile whether you have too much nitrogen or too much carbon. So let's say your pile's too hot. What do you have in there? You've got an excess of what? Nitrogen. If it's too hot, you got too much nitrogen. If it's too cold, too much carbon. So you can control the temperature of the pile with that knowledge right there. How cool is that? God made things pretty simple, didn't he? Do I have a website? I think I don't right now, but that's going to change. I don't know what God's going to do. It depends what happens after this seminar. If I get invitations, which it sounds like I've already got some, I'm going to be doing some for the preppers. Steve is going to record me here a little bit too. I think God wants this information out. Can you imagine it just being buried? I mean, me come and do one seminar and never heard of again. I don't think any of us want that. And so I think God is going to lead. Oh, I know He's going to lead me wherever He wants me. So at some point, I am going to have a website, and yeah. Have I heard of what? Yeah. Really? I haven't heard about it. I'd have to look at it very carefully. I went to a garden seminar up in Hope, British Columbia just last week, and I went through it just because I wanted to know. I mean, I don't have all the answers, and so I wasn't just going to say, well, I already know enough. So I deliberately chose that as my main thing to go to because I wanted to see what other people were doing. I also wanted to examine my own presentation and see how I could improve upon it. And so I went, and the Back to Eden, at first, I was really skeptical because he had everything right except for one thing. He had his nitrogen-carbon ratio way out of whack. Well, then I was talking to Emil, who had been watching another video, and no, evidently he has his nitrogen ratio perfect. So that Back to Eden, God showed him exactly the right thing. The only thing I have done differently than he has done, I've shown you a whole bunch of different things you can do because I wanted you folks here to be able to go home and say, you know what, I love this idea right here. This is exactly what I want to do. And for some of you, it's going to be the deep beds. For some of you, it's going to be raised beds. For some of you, well, I'm going to get out here and I'm going to at least get rid of the weed problem in the aisles and stop rototilling. And so I've come up with a big shotgun approach that will help hopefully all of you here. Okay, she's close. We'll take her. We'll work our way back and then we'll be done.
We had a problem with gophers for a long time trying to, so we found a gopher snake and we stuck it in there and we've had no problems.
So she used the gopher snake to and there's other things you can do, and I'm on video, so I probably won't tell you some of the other things I might try, because I'm on video. We'll just say if you go on the internet, there's some real cures for that, but I really don't want to be on tape to say how I might approach that, because I'm still a Canadian farm boy at heart, and us Canadian farm boys, you know, we have a little different approach than some others over here. Any way to increase the mycorrhiza? Yeah, increase the soil fertility. That's it. Somehow that mycorrhiza, and again, it depends your location, right? I mean, if you're in the middle of Nevada or somewhere, or I'm not picking on Nevada, but you know, if you've got, like in Oregon, we have some beautiful scenery and some nice soil and stuff like that. But if you're in an area that doesn't have that beautiful, rich soil, but bottom line is protozoa is everywhere, bacteria is everywhere, and the mycorrhiza, I haven't studied if there's areas, but you see, here's the bottom line. God put that mycorrhiza there, and I think generally if you improve the soil, it'll show up. It might take a while. If you live in an area where it's really low, if you live in the middle of where I used to live, where there's 10,000 acre farms, there's not going to be much mycorrhiza around, right? Because we've destroyed it, most of it. But it's tenacious. See, like, remember the name George Burns? Anyone still know that name, George Burns? He smoked the cigars all the time and drank, and and he lived to be 100 and what? God put a lot of vitality. When God did the creation, everything spoke life, 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 right? So I really don't, I think there are, in general, if you build up the soil, the mycorrhiza will come. And there will be exceptions probably. If you're in the middle of the Sahara, I don't know that the mycorrhiza would show up. Maybe they would, because there's probably not a whole lot of that in the Sahara. So you have to look at every case separately.
If you watch the Lazy Gardener lady on YouTube, she'll tell you, go to a forest near where you live and get a bucket of soil and take it and use it to inoculate.
There you go. Yeah, see that? Oh, exactly. So you can use, exactly. So you can use a little of the leaf mold or whatever. The goat manure is a wonderful thing. The mycorrhiza in this area, I don't think is an issue that I'm aware of. Way, way back there at the back. You'll have to speak loud. With the hat, with the blue, is it? Oh, his. Yeah, come on up closer.
Oh. Tomato plants and they're on fencing, can you leave the fencing in place? Do you have to take it down every year to build up the trenches?
He's asking about if you've got, some people go to great lengths in their gardens and build a lot of fancy structures, for example, to hold up your tomatoes. Do you need to pull them up every year? Not really. No, you'll be okay. If you're rototilling, yes, pull them up every year, and because they'll be in the road of the rototiller. But if you're not going to rototill, they're going to be just fine.
What's your suggestion on crop rotation? And what's the biggest don't?
Biggest don'ts on crop rotation. Well, my experience comes as a commercial cereal grain farmer, and so we knew that you didn't grow canola 2 years straight in a row because some things are so hard on the soil that if you grow it, you're just going to deplete your soil of certain minerals. And because you've killed all the mycorrhiza, yeah, and so commercial farming has a way greater issue with that than we would in our garden. So in our garden, I'm just trying to think if I know of any plants. Do you know of any plants that you don't want to have? So for example, in my wide beds, well, okay. There you go. So don't put potatoes 5 years in a row in the same place. Yeah. Blight, yes. Yeah, so in my wide beds, I've ignored plant rotation because that mycorrhiza has, in farm terms, has acres and acres and acres of area to go and look for nutrients. So, yeah. So in the garden, there are exceptions, like she mentioned, about potatoes. I've ignored crop rotation in the garden simply because my soil is such an amazing. If you can walk up and put a little thing the size of your finger, 2.5 feet in the soil, if I move this plant an extra 20 feet that way, it's irrelevant, you know, because the mycorrhiza covers every square inch of that ground anyway. So really, I can't think of any reasons why I would rotate other than, like, for example, blight and disease. But here's the thing about when you grow what I call the wide beds, I don't have a problem with disease because guess what? Do healthy people have a problem with disease? Well, not so much. If you have a healthy plant, it's healthy. It has a way more ability in its own self, right? But then we watched some YouTubes that really caught our attention, didn't we? These plants have ability to actually call for, in fact, didn't one of them say plants that can actually hire bodyguards? And so these plants are not as helpless as we think they are, is the point. So rotation in your garden, I'm not so sure about. And again, you're a mouse click away from a genius. And so I'm not here to give you all the answers. And that's not fair if I give you all the answers. I have to I've put my time in. You know, it's your garden, and I hope you enjoy it. But you know, you can do the research that you want. So we're ready to quit, and it's going to be lunchtime. We'll miss lunch if we don't get moving. So let's just have a closing prayer, and I'm just very honored that each one of you was here, and thank you for taking the time to do that. Let's pray. Heavenly Father, now we're going to go home with a new perspective. And you are the creator, and you are the one that put the system in place, and you are indeed at the center of the universe. May each one of us take to heart that we can put you at the center of our garden experience, and when we do that, you will be beside us, and that you will bless us. And we thank you, and especially as we live to give for the good of others, because that's at the heart of why we are here. So we just pray that you would be with each one of these dear saints as they go home, and look how they can put you at the center of their garden so that they can produce healthy food that they can share in an abundance with their friends and loved ones. And we pray in Jesus' name. Amen. Oh, somebody wants to picture my... You can thank my wife. She got this... Pardon?